Hey, it's still football season. Maybe the postseason, but it's football season. We do have Army Navy left through the things like that. But this guy's working today. He's got a big game this weekend. Coach Urban Meyer, welcome back to another edition of Best Fridays in Football. And where are you going next, Urban?
When we're done with Fox, I'm going to do a Big Ten network and go to the Cotton Bowl, Ohio State against Missouri. Um, Fox Big Noon. We had the number one rated show the final week, and it's real disappointing we don't have the playoffs. So I think I'm hoping we get a playoff game or two next year when they go to 12. But Fox Big Noon, we're finished for the year after the Big Ten championship game, and now I go to Big Ten Network. Uh, but I'm like you. I think the matchups. I know there's a lot of controversy, and I know we're Gators, but you also respect incredible efforts. The darn Florida State team, my gosh. I mean, every player deserves to play in that championship game. That coach, I think he should be coach of the year. He's national coach of the year in my mind. What he did, and because I saw that team, we all did several years ago. They were awful, and what he's done is legendary. I think they'll always remember him. But I think the committee, I hate to say it, they got it right. They got the four best teams. The only team that really could fight is, say, Georgia. I think Georgia would be favored in most of those games.
Yeah. Which leads to a lot of questions at the least, which if you've had the eye test, it doesn't take a genius to say that Georgia was one of the best three or four teams in the country, and yet they played what was amounting to a play-in game. So, and there wasn't room for two SEC schools. It didn't feel right, Urban.
Yeah, but once again, the committee's challenge is to get the four best teams in the
No.
country, and Georgia is the next one. I know they had Florida State fifth, but Georgia goes from 1 to 6, and but is what it is. I don't know. I think I think they got it right. I'm a player guy. I'm a coach guy, and I appreciate great efforts. And that Florida State team, it just was a clunky game. The quarterback went down,
Mm-hmm.
Jordan Travis. It doesn't look the same, and it we people compared it to when we lost our quarterback and we won a national championship with third string quarterback. But our third string guy was Cardell Jones, and he went in there and looked like a Heisman Trophy candidate. And
Yeah.
we beat the team 59-0 and jumped from 6 to 4. So it was completely different result. If they would have looked like that, Florida State would have been in the championship in the playoffs.
You're right. There was no way they weren't going to get it right because there were going to be two teams left out. No matter what you say, I don't know who I would have taken out. I'm just saying the system, we know it was broken somewhat. You can't get 10 pounds and you know what in a 5 pound bag. There were six good teams, seven, count Ohio State. That this would have been the year to go to 12 teams, Urban, as you know, but they didn't get it done. And one of the reasons was the ACC guys lobbied against it and delayed it a year. So there you go. Speaking of which, you're a player guy and a coach guy, as you say. Out of this whole group, who do you feel the worst for in terms of the players?
By far, Florida State. Georgia, they should be in just on who they are and their talent. Because they'd be, like I said, I think they'd be favored in every game if they were playing in that
I heard that.
playoff. But they lost. Florida State never lost. At the end of the day, your job is to win. How, it doesn't matter. You find a way to win, and they did. So I think forever, Florida State, those players, if they find a way to beat Georgia in that Orange Bowl, which is
Wow.
going to be a tall task,
Wow.
unless Georgia's guys don't play,
Yeah.
I think someone told me it's a double-digit spread. I haven't even looked. But if Florida State wins that, I know it's kind of silly, but I'm buying my guys a ring and saying you did everything I asked you to do.
Hmm.
In my heart, you're national title, you're
Yeah. Well,
champions.
it's just a
And
tough
someone
one.
said you can't do that. I can do whatever I want to do. Sure, I can. For my players, I'll do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you
So,
kind of almost have to do something, right, as a coach to recognize it. Uh, you think I hate to see like Georgia come and say, oh, they're going to play second, third stringers or whatever, because it feels like to me that FSU has an opportunity to, prove everybody wrong. If they could go out and beat Georgia, and that you have even more reason to crow, right?
Oh, I'd be screaming from the hills. Absolutely they do. And Once again, I'm not saying the committee didn't get it right, but if you're just talking about a group of 85, 17 to 21-year-olds that wake up every morning and try to do something that many say can't be done, and that's go undefeated in the ACC, and then your best player gets hurt and you still find a way to win with great defense and creative offense. I mean, if I'm that athletic director, I'll make sure I take care of that coach and those players.
Urban, the system was broken before they went into it. It didn't seem to work. Was that because there wasn't enough visionary people on the committee or who weren't scouts football? In other words, we all knew this was going to come at some day, right? You were going to get squeezed out because of the four teams. I never liked it. Some people said, yeah, it's like the Final Four. Um, 12 teams is a good number. I like that a lot. Are you in favor of that?
I am. I think it's gonna. There's two. It's twofold. Number one is you get Florida State would be in it, and the reality is you can find 6 teams to go play for a title. You can't find 12. I don't think those they'll be fighting and scratching and clawing to get that last spot. But normally speaking, I don't know if I've ever seen a number 12 team that has a quality of roster, etc., to go play for a national title. You can find 4 to 5 to 6. We were there. We at Ohio State we were at 2015. I think we're the best team in the country, but we lost a game, and we went on to run the ball for almost 400 yards against Wolverines and beat the heck out of Notre Dame. So that was a national championship team. We didn't do it. '09 at Florida. We got beaten in the SEC championship game.
Yeah.
We're undefeated, but we had some stuff happen for that game. If that team would have got a chance, you don't bet against the Gator in '09. I mean, if we would have got a chance to go to playoffs back in '09, once again, I'm very biased. That team, once again, don't bet against them.
We've talked with this a lot, and Brenden, you remember this, is that the obsession that Nick Saban had after he lost that game with you in '08. Everything was, I'm told, the practices were set. Everything was circling red. It was 364 days till D-Day. They that put their whole effort into getting ready for Florida the next year, and it worked. Is Saban as good as there is about getting up for one game?
Yeah, he is. I talked to Mark Ingram, one of my great friends now and colleague at Fox. He was on that. We beat him in '08, lost to him in '09, and he had a huge day against us '09. But he even says in his career, that was his Super Bowls in college. The national championship was a little bit of a letdown. He said after it was not a letdown, but we all knew whoever won the '08 and whoever won the '09, those are the two best teams in the country.
And Brenden, we were there the night that Florida got the ball and drove it down to Alabama's throat in the fourth quarter. Of course, made some big pass plays too, but you dominated Alabama, and that really had to sting. That was one of the great quarters I've seen in Florida football ever that night, Urban. I know you've thought about it a lot. And what a moment that was to play that way and just absolutely dominate a great team like Alabama. That's what stuck in Nick's throat.
Yeah, and I remember when we were finished, I was putting together our practice schedules for the national championship game, which, by the way, was only like I think 8 days later. So
Yeah.
you had to get going. And I put the practice schedule together, and of course, I had the penalties and Tebow and leaders at spikes, and I had us in pads, and they came to me and said, "I'm not sure we can go." Our bodies. That was such a sledgehammer. You know, so if you remember the violence on that field that day,
Yeah.
the big athletic men playing that game that day. The collisions. I remember we went, I think, 3 or 4 days without pads because we had to get our guys healthy for the Oklahoma national championship game.
Yeah, I remember because I take video and photos on the sidelines, and I remember I even think said something to Dad. I said after the game, I said everyone is just so like it was. I think I used violence, and it's like violent out there. Those guys are so big. I've been to plenty of pro games, and it was just like it was like being at a professional or an NFL playoff game. It was really quite something to see those matchups at that year, and then the following year, really watching two teams go at it.
And I think Tebow. I'm biased, and we did Tebow went to Hall of Fame this weekend in Vegas, and we were there. And that was Tim's greatest quarter of football. I mean, his second half
Yeah.
against Alabama, he threw the ball. You think a couple throws to Murphy, and I mean, some of those, David Nelson, some of those throws were unbelievable. And Riley Cooper, the game winner. I mean, he got to a second read on double slants out there, and magical. That was a magical time.
As a coaching perspective, what I mean, I know this is a tough question because he's so multifaceted, but maybe what was your favorite or what, thing about coaching Tim Tebow as a player?
His consistency every day, and he gets a lot of credit, which is deservedly so. The thing I don't think people really understand, because he's such a nice person, he's the toughest player I've ever coached. His pain threshold, he's a freak. He did things that you just fight through it that most guys, just can't get through it. So yes, he's a great leader. Yes, he was a great runner. He was good enough thrower to do all the things we asked him to do, but his toughness was the thing that to this day I still think back at, because I know a lot of the injuries that not many people knew that he had, that he was fighting through, and the majority of people that put on a helmet would have probably not played when he was fighting through stuff.
I always joked around and I said Tebow, it always seemed that he had to go and it's like switch into that personality on the field where it's almost like he had to go find a linebacker or something to block in the first couple of minutes of the game. He's such a nice person, and then to kind of switch into that other guy, it was like I always said I was like he had to mix it up a little bit to kind of turn into the Hulk.
And he wanted to run the ball early in the game. Alex Smith was like that too. We've had quarterbacks that say, "Let me run the ball early," and because there's so much anxiety as you're getting ready to, especially the big ones. And I remember, those kind of quarterbacks say, "Give me a Q run or give me something," and of course we did, because it's his world.
Wow.
I'm doing a column this week on Tim, and I was blessed to be able to watch him take every snap. And I've asked a number of people to describe Tim, his greatness, in one word, and if possible, one sentence. What would your one word be? It's pretty tough to a multifaceted guy to put it in one word, but if I said, give me one word that describes Tim Tebow.
I think rugged. Just a rugged guy, a guy that unflappable, but as I said a minute ago, the thing that separates him is his toughness. And that's also mental toughness. It's not just the physical toughness, it's the mental toughness that it takes to, I mean, every day he came in with a great attitude. Someone say it's great attitude. No, that's toughness. He came to practice every day with, I never remember him other than the doctors pulling him out after he got the concussion in Kentucky where he didn't practice. It never happened. And why is that? You can say, well, resilient, that's all true. But the one word that encapsulates it all is toughness.
He certainly was that. That was a frightening night in Lexington.
Oh, never forget it. Never forget it. Never forget it.
So Urban, to bring it back to where we are today, a lot of people are very upset. They're almost terrified about what's happened to Florida's program. There's been some defections. There have been defections all over college football. It seems like it's on somewhat of a downward spiral for Billy Napier in Gainesville and a lot of negativity. I'm going to read you something. This is just an example of what's going on these days at Florida because their fan base is fan base is really upset. And what do you tell the fan base? Because they lost two of the best players this week. And ETN's gone now to the portal, and of course, Human Millen is gone. Says he'll come back if, in fact, they get the right coaches. That's a different thing. And now you got a situation where you got guys going to the portal, because of the coaching staff they've got. So I don't know. I guess that's legal and all that sort of stuff. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, first of all, Florida fans have the right to be upset. They're fans. Florida's elite place. Ohio State fans are really upset. They're 11-1. There's Florida State fans are losing their mind because they're not in the playoff. That's what makes us great. The minute, and I would always try to temper myself and make sure our players and everybody knew. Say there's a reason why we have these nice facilities. Why I guess there's NIL now. It's because fans. You want to just be careful. Don't just take it and deal with it because no one's making the coaching staff stay at Florida. If you know what I mean. There's plenty of places where you can go and mediocrity is accepted. And that's not, Florida's not one of them. Ohio State's not one of them. And I would always tell myself that, but I would also, as I'm reminding myself that, I'd share with our team saying, I will help you go wherever you want to go. If you don't like this is too much for you. If it's too much for you, I'll sign your transfer papers right now and you can go. That includes our coaching staff. But as long as you're here, you're expected to be the very best in the country at what you do. If that does not fit your job description, you need to leave. And I'll help you. That does not make you a bad person. Pay your taxes, be a good guy, but get out of here because this is what's expected if you're not the very best in the country at what you do. So that would be my message to the Florida Gators. I would, try to shut it off as far as, that's one of the mistakes I made at Florida is I listened too much. I mean, we're 13-1 and we're getting booed off the field, because we didn't win our second national title. And I listened to that, and that did eat me out a little bit. I didn't do that at Ohio State. I refused to get involved with that. But I would never take a shot at a fan because that's our choice. And Billy Napier and his staff, is there pressure on them? Hell yeah, there is. But that comes with the job. And I would not panic if I'm the coaching staff. I keep hearing about the process, the plan that he hasn't. It's got to, at some point, it's got to get going. But I would not panic if I'm him. I just keep grinding, just keep your head down, and do the very best you can.
That
How
answers the
pub?
question I was going to
Yeah,
ask you, to me, Brendan, about that, which is getting the messaging out. How does the coach
yeah.
do that? What can he
Yeah, I
say?
don't.
I
I
mean,
don't
it
know,
seems,
bro. You mentioned that earlier. I don't
yeah,
know. I've never been a big fan when an AD sends a letter out, I never done that. I wouldn't do that. Um, I think that's a sign. I don't want to say sign of weakness, but that's, you don't have to do that. I know you mentioned something earlier before we get on the air here. Is that does he owe something? No, he owes them to go do to go get great players, make sure his staff is the top of the line. He's got to do that. But I don't think sending letters out or emails or some type of social media post. I've never been a fan of that. Some people have done it. I never would do that.
and Brendan, we've been talking about this on the show a lot. Obviously, there's something setting in Gator Nation. It's a bit of panic, and here's a comment from a listener who wrote this. He said, "Billy is 11-13. We've had 3 straight losing seasons. There is zero chance he stays if he has another 500 or losing season." And he says, if someone told me that Billy wins 6 games, he'll get another year. So this is the prevailing attitude right now about it, and you're hanging on to fight for dear life. But like you said, sooner or later, you got a plan. It's got to reveal itself. I think that's what we're waiting on right now. Let's see what you got. I like your approach. Like Steve Jobs said, it's not for everyone, right? This is tough. This is
Right.
Florida football. It's the way it is. But at some point, and includes the coaches, you got to show us.
Yeah, I love the Steve Jobs analogy because I used him all the time. And I mean, I didn't agree with some of the things he did, but I remember in memoir where he talked about someone asked him, said, "Boy, I hear you're really hard to work for," and he looked all confused at the reporter. Said, "Come walk with me," and he showed people the $10 million houses on the hill. And he asked the reporter, said, "Did you go ask them? Those are my former employees." So you can go back to our time and say, okay, did you really enjoy playing at the University of Florida for Coach Meyer and his staff? You're going to find a handful of people that couldn't stand it. That's okay. That's but then you can also go find Heisman Trophy winners, national champions, All Americans, first round draft picks, and people walking around giant rings on their fingers that said, yeah, that was pretty cool. So Coach Napier's job is not to appease, but demand. And that's not easy nowadays. I get it. This is 2020, whatever it is, 2023. This is a much, much different time. But my thought was always you push until just keep pushing. Even when you think you're at the limit, keep pushing, keep pushing everybody because you're at the best place in the country. And remember, evaluation is not hard at Florida or Ohio State. It's not. You're expected to do this. And if you're not number one, you have to find out why and push everyone to become number one.
All right, Urban. Some people say it's all about the money. All about the money. Hard to argue that in a way when players are asking for money just to come a visit for a recruiting visit, want $5,000 or whatever. I don't understand it anymore. But I think back to Charlie Pell, a name in Florida football history. This got a few stains on it because of the problems he got into. Charlie was a good man. Charlie did a lot of great things. He got criticized because he went after the money early on. Ben Hill Griffin stroked him that big check, and he named the stadium after him. Charlie Pell was ahead of his time, maybe, right?
Yeah, but that was I wouldn't equate the two. That was something that hurt Florida very badly too. Took down. I think it took down a banner, and that. But it's legal now.
That's
And
my point.
yeah, I hear it, and I want to see players get their value. I'll be honest with you, it breaks my heart. I I just love the purity of college football. I love, and people say I'm so old school about this. I love education. We worked so hard on those real life Wednesdays. We started at Florida and then we did it at Ohio State. Because I'm at the age now, I see guys that played for us 20, 25, 15 years ago, and some are really struggling. I'll tell you the ones that aren't, the ones with great jobs, great backgrounds, great experience, and great education, they're doing fine. It's the other guys, and 10,000, 20,000, even $50,000 seems like a lot of money. You guys know it's not. It's not. In the big picture, it's not. Now, you start throwing seven digits on there, that's a lot, but still, that's not enough. So what you got to do is, it really, it breaks my heart a bit that the word education isn't a premium placed on education, and not just graduation rates, but preparing these guys fiscally and mentally for 40 years of working. That's what drove. I mean, that was a big part of our life as a coach. That's the way I was raised. I grew up in the Woody Hayes, Earl Bruce era, and even I know we won a lot of games, had a lot of high draft picks. We spent so much time on that part of it, and I'm hearing it's just not that huge a deal anymore. Now it's how do I get my $50,000? That's not. I think it's good, but that's not the ultimate goal to me. Is preparing them, not handing them something.
What do you think, Coach? What would you think about something? Because I was thinking about this earlier. It's like, having kids, right? You don't want to give them all this money when they're young, they don't understand it or whatever. But what if we could put it into trust and they could gain like 10%? They get it when they graduate or when they leave or whatever. It just seems like there needs to be something in place, because everyone's talking now about, well, you got to redo the rules. They're going to have to figure it out and all that kind of stuff. And to me, it's all about, this guy's getting $900,000 a year and this guy's getting nothing. You're on the same team. There's got to be all sorts of issues that arise, in between the team. I don't know. What do you think about something like that?
Well, I'm going to say something that might push a little pushback, but I'm fine. And there is things in place. It doesn't need to be a trust. It's called. It's called your parents.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, that's why they have moms and dads. That way, when your son gets that kind of, if they get that kind of money, yeah, they don't need to have the government help you with it. They don't need to have the bank help you with it. It's called mom and dad. That's the way the creator set this world up. And so, and once again, the correlation between, I don't want to get into all that, but yeah, it's guardrails. And the guardrails to me are the parents.
Well said.
Good
Final
answer.
final question for you, Coach. And by the way, congratulations on all the success of Big Noon. You guys killed it, man. You really did, and that show is taking off, and it's going to be even bigger next year. So well done, and I know you've enjoyed your time. Unless some other opportunity comes along, and this is always the top part of the show. We talk about this. A lot of people, your name comes up almost every day. Every day. You and I have had this conversation 1,000 times. I know the answer is no, etc. But the other day I was talking to a friend of mine who's well connected to some big money people in Florida. He kind of knows the heartbeat and the pulse. And he said, I know what Urban says. I've heard him say it on your show. But what about this? What if somebody gave Urban a blank check and said, come back and save Florida football? We need you. You can do this. Would he even consider it?
How do I know that you're always saving that near the end, buddy? That kind of conversation.
It's good TV.
Yeah, good TV. No, I know that. No, I'm ecstatic where I'm at in my life. More importantly, I have a wife and 3 kids and 3 in-laws now and 4 grandbabies. And we're traveling. We're doing. I love my TV job. Um, and the one thing is, buddy, I'm not ignorant. I don't know if I could survive in this climate. And I don't. I'm not saying it's bad. It's just maybe not for me. A backup offense lineman coming in demanding, money when I know they could be so much better. I would I would have honest conversations with people, and I don't know how that would go. So I really admire these coaches right now in this situation that they're in. They have to somehow keep these rosters together, and once again, I'm still very connected in this game, and I hear some of the conversations, and I'm like, I just like, my God, my gosh, is that really what's going on here? And instead of worrying about what's their internship going to be in the spring, what's their shadow opportunities to get real world experience, so when they're done playing sports, they're ready. It's I'm demanding this, I'm demanding this, and not to take away that players should have name and likeness, because they should, but I have a general concern because I probably know more than most what's really going on, especially this time of year. Transfer portal opens, NIL is a topic of conversation on every player, and people are jumping ship. It's tough right now.
That's the answer I gave him. I don't think there's no way to know how because the game is different. It doesn't fit Urban's personality. I don't see how. I mean, it seems to me like it's an impossible job. It's like being the mayor of New York City. There's just too much to govern. And Urban, as much as fanatical you are as about detail, I feel sorry for these coaches. How do you manage all this stuff? There's too many things on your plate, and I know your profession has a lot of honorable men in it, and I've liked coaches all my life. I don't know what you do if you're a coach today, because frankly, Nick Saban is unbelievable. He's survived all of this and gotten here, and I don't know. Do you know anybody's doing it better than Saban anywhere? And if he can handle it at his age, that's amazing.
It is. That's why he's he's got to go down as the best of all time. Not just the fact that he's won, but because there's a lot of coaches that have won. Sustainability is something that I've admired him. He's gone through. Remember, I started losing coaches. That was horrible.
Yeah.
He's lost coaches every year, and somehow here they are again. And I don't bet against him, by the way, in the playoff.
I was pretty impressed, and everybody else was too. He's still got game. And anything else, Brenda, you want to ask Coach before we let him
Well, I
go
just
out?
want him to say you can say Nick Saban's the best of all time, but in my book, Urban Meyer is the best of all time. So, and I'm not looking at statistics or anything else. I really enjoyed watching you coach over the years, and I think the way you did it was the right way. So kudos to you, Coach. I think you did it. You raised a lot of good men out there in this world and cared about it. And I'm not saying other coaches don't do that, but it was an honor to do this show with you this season and to get to know you a little bit better, and it just sort of further cements my position on that. So you're in my book, you're the best of all time. So it's not a question; it's just a statement.
Well, love you guys, and Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Urban. Hope we talk to
Merry
you next
Christmas.
weekend. Do one more show here before whatever, and we'll get back with you on that. Thank you so much, Coach Urban
Th-
Meyer. Best
Thanks.
Fridays in football. Thanks, Urban.
Thank you, guys.